Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Modern Working Musician. I'm your host, Keegan Peluso, and thank you so much for joining us as we come back from this long break. We are starting back our interview series this week with Miss Louise Page. Louise is one of my all-time favorite musicians. She's a musician-songwriter from the Memphis area, and she's just a total rock star. She's doing the DIY thing. She is a full-time musician, gigging and songwriting, doing original music, and she's just a wellspring of knowledge about how to book a tour, how to get paid for the music you play, doing original music, and she's just fantastic. You can definitely hear how excited and nervous I am to do this interview, but that being said, she's just a super nice human being, and we talk a lot about how she got her start in music, when she took the leap into playing music full time. We talk a little bit about music and activism and how they play an important role with each other. You can find all of her stuff at Louise Page on social media and louisepagemusic.com. So thank you so much for listening. If you want to find us, we're at Modern Working Musician on all social media, and everything else at keeganpeluso.com. That's where all my stuff lives. So thank you so much, and without further ado, here is Miss Louise Page. Almost forgot, this was recorded back in November of 2021. So some of these things have already happened or been released, but all of it's fantastic. All of the information is great, and all the music that she's talking about releasing has already been released, so it's just awesome. So I'm gonna stop talking now, and bye. Cool, you about ready to jump in?
I'm ready.
All right, cool. I think that's a 7B.
So
you got to you kind of have to get up on it. I don't know. Alrighty. So I'm so glad this is like my first interview back from this podcast.
Cool.
So, all right.
Welcome back.
Yes. All right. Welcome back to The Modern Working Musician, where we explore the idea that there is no set career path in music. Today, my guest is a rock star. I already told her this is the most starstruck interview I've ever done. Miss Louise Page. She is a staple in the Memphis music industry, as well as many other things. You've done like a West Coast tour and all this stuff. You just do a lot of stuff. East Coast.
West Coast is on my list. Actually, I wanted to do a West Coast tour in 2020, and I'll let you guess about how far I got with that one. That did not go down, but that was originally my plan before the world exploded. I wanted to do that. But we did do an East Coast tour and like a Mid-South tour that went through like Texas and New Orleans and stuff.
That's
and
fantastic. Haven't
toured since 2019 just because of all the nonsense.
I got you.
Thank you for that great intro. That's so nice.
No problem. Yeah, I'm glad I'm formulating words right now. So this is great. So I kind of want to go back to like the very, very beginning. We talked a little bit about it before we got started about like your formal music education path, because we're all music education nerds in here. So
Yay.
Do you want to talk a little bit about like your quote formal music education?
Sure. First of all, hello listeners. My name is Louise Page, and I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, thank you.
So I grew up in central Pennsylvania in a town called State College. It is called that because the State College is there, Penn State University. It's a very literal name. It's a really tiny little university town. There's a lot of agriculture and dairy farms and stuff about, and there's only one high school in town, so everyone goes to the same high school. Pretty much. There's one really teeny tiny alternative high school, but like 99% of kids in that town go to the same high school. It's a public school, and lucky for me, it has a really, really good music program. So that is definitely a big part of my music education. But going even further back, I started playing the piano when I was 5.
Oh, wow.
So I say I've been playing the piano for more than 20 years, and I see people doing like the mental math of like, how old is she? But I'm 28. I've been playing since I was 5. So it's 23 years of piano. I genuinely can barely remember not playing it. You know, it's like, it's part of me. So when I was really little, I always liked toys that made sounds. Like I had this cash register toy that I really liked. And I don't think my parents put together that it was because of the sounds until later on when I was really, really into music. But it's because of the sounds it made. I liked that it pushed the buttons and made sounds. So then when I was 5, my parents got an upright piano for my older siblings. I have 2 older siblings.
Okay.
I'm the youngest. And I was the one that was really, really into it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is like my cash register toy, but a million times better.
Oh, that's so
because there's 88 buttons and they all make different noises.
Mm-hmm.
This is crazy. So I really wanted lessons, and they thought I was too young. And now that I teach piano, maybe I was, but whatever. I started when I was 5, and very traditionally, my teacher was a very nice woman who went to our church named Nancy Willis. And she taught me for the first, probably the first 8 years or so, I took lessons. And then when I was around 12 or 13, I switched teachers just to get kind of like a more advanced level teacher. Yeah. And my second piano teacher was named Koya Emoto, and she was just a really special person. She somehow managed to be a strict teacher and also like a super kind, nice teacher. You know,
that's amazing.
It's a difficult balance to strike. So I really did really well with her because I wanted to do well for her, you know. For example, if I showed up to piano lessons and my fingernails were too long, she would make me go home and clip them. Oh, cool. Or if I showed up and I hadn't practiced, she would send me home. This is some small town stuff too. I walked to her house. It was like a block away. So it's not that dramatic that she sent me home. But so she would send me home to clip my nails, and then I'd have to come back. Or if I didn't practice, she would be really nice about it. But she'd be like, oh, you didn't practice, so I'll see you next week. And I'd be like, oh no. So
that's amazing.
So that was all classical piano. So I did that all through school. And then on top of that, I always did band and choir. So fantastic. I went to church growing up, so I sang in my church choir, which I really liked. That was really one of the first places I heard music, live music, was at church. Right. So I did that, and in my school system, you could join choir and band starting in 4th grade.
Oh man, that's so cool.
So I did that. I started choir and did that all 4th through 12th grade. And I also started playing the oboe and played that 4th through 12th grade. So there's just sort of, you know, you have your little high school, middle school identities. I was a music kid, really, and truly I was. That was like my thing. That's what I did.
That's wonderful.
And then in high school, it really popped off. In elementary school and middle school, I had other interests too. I did a little bit of musical theater, which I guess is still music, and I played soccer, which I wasn't very good at, but I liked it. And I did some dance classes. And then in high school, it was like all music. So I was in concert band playing the oboe. I was in marching band on drumline. Awesome. Because you can't march an oboe. They're too fragile. And I was in regular choir, and I also was in, I'm trying to remember, there was some cute name for it, but there was like an all-girls choir that I was into. Choir or something like that? Yeah, well, it was some cute little name that I can't remember. But, you know, it had some cute name, and I was in that choir, and my senior year of high school, I was like the president of the girls' choir. And yeah, so, I mean, really long answer, but to make a long story short, I was such a music kid, and I did every single band and choir thing that I could possibly do. And I loved it. But what I didn't do was I did not have a band where I played original music. I was all about like these big concert bands and choirs that were a little bit more like classical stuff. That was what I did. Okay. Yeah.
It kind of sounds like you were like a music major in high school.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I wasn't in college, which is interesting. I wasn't at all. I went to Rhodes, which is how I ended up down here.
Oh, okay. I was always curious about that.
Yeah, my mom is from Memphis, so I got Memphis roots. Like my mom's whole side of the family's here. I still have a bunch of extended family here, like my grandmother, one of my aunts and uncles and cousins, and then some like second cousins and extended family. So, and I grew up visiting Memphis, but I guess I kind of wanted to explore some other sides of my identity in college. Yeah. So I was an English major, and I played music more privately. Like some of my friends didn't even know I played piano in college. I really kind of went more inverted and introverted with the music stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it like having listened to your works now, you can definitely tell like you have this very like intense like musical background, and then you go to college for like something like English and like creative. I'm sure you did some kind of creative writing or something.
I was a creative writing major.
Really? Yeah.
Exactly what I did.
Wow. So you can definitely tell how like you have these two like amazing artistic fields colliding in your music. So.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. That's really nice. Yeah. I got a little bit jaded about music, I think, in college. I've said this before in interviews, but it's sad to me to think about all the pressure we put on really young people. You know, when you're 18, you're supposed to have it all figured out,
right. Yeah.
Quote unquote, which none of us do. And I think that deep down inside, I wanted to do something like what I'm doing now, like release original music and perform and things like that. And I thought at age 18 that it was already too late for me, you know?
Really?
I was like, oh, well, I haven't starred in a Disney Channel original movie and I'm 18, so it's time to move on and do something more realistic with my life. Yeah. Which you can tell I was 18 because my more realistic choice was being an English major, which is like maybe an even playing field of just, the arts. It's, but I guess that's the whole point of this podcast, right? Is you can have a true career in the arts, right?
Right, yeah. And it doesn't, there's not one specific idea of what a career in music really is.
I love that. So. I could have used this podcast 10 years ago. Well, it would have helped me out.
We're working on it. We're trying to get, so if you're currently in choir and you play oboe, so
I know,
this podcast is for you.
You are me. Hello. Yeah. But and just to be honest with you, I had a good childhood. I had a long childhood too. I felt like a kid still when I was in high school. I was a pretty good kid, and I was pretty naive and pretty innocent for most of high school. And college was kind of the opposite of that. It was a really, really hard time for me, and I was drinking a lot and experimenting with drugs and partying and getting myself into bad situations. And so I never could have done any of the stuff I do with music now in college. I just did not have it together enough to do any of that. And I now have some colleagues who are Memphis musicians who are really young, who are 20, 21, 22, and like releasing full albums and doing their thing. And I'm super impressed with them. But if anyone out there is listening, you don't need to start that young. I mean, I sure didn't. I physically could not have done that in college. I just really was still figuring out who I was. I was a late bloomer. I was just still figuring it all out. And college was a really hard time for me personally. So it's like a miracle that I even went to class and graduated. And that was kind of all I could handle. I couldn't handle on top of that releasing my music. So in college, I wrote music and I played piano all the time, but partly because of all the things I was going through, I was super private about it. I was really shy about it. I would do the thing that I think every musician has done, where I'd be like in a practice room with one of my best friends, and I would tell them, I'm going to play you a song on the piano. And then it would be this whole song and dance of me like being really nervous and being like, okay, I'm really going to do it. Maybe you should just face the wall. Like maybe I could do it if you weren't looking at me or whatever,
Totally.
I was super, super, still figuring myself out in college and way too insecure to share anything original. And I was feeling like it was too late for me to pursue music. And anyway, so that's sort of how I got started. This really like robust background in middle school and high school. Yeah. And then in college, I still practice piano all the time. I've loved piano my whole life. I could play it for hours. It is like my happy place. It makes me feel calm. But I just, for about 4 years there in college, only did it as a private, personal practice.
I gotcha. I think it's so cool. You talked about like middle school and then on like discovering your like musical identity. Like as a music educator, like that's what I loved about teaching choir was like, there were kids that like went from my choir program into high school and they're like, yeah, we're choir kids. I'm like, oh my God, those are kids.
Yeah.
Like that was like that was the thing that like motivated me as a teacher to see kids like come to choir and be like, this is my thing. Right. I'm a choir kid. That's wonderful.
Yeah. I was an alto, so I had a little bit,
I was going to guess from your concerto tonight.
Yeah, so I wanted to be a soprano when I was an alto. I'm way past that now. I love being an alto.
Your upper register
Shout
is
out.
beautiful, by the way, though.
Thank you. But you know what? It wasn't in high school. My voice was still developing, you know, and I didn't really just straight up. My voice is a lot better now than it was when I was in high school. It was
mine too. I could not match pitch till I was 23, so I understand.
Thank you. That's very nice of you to say. Yeah.
Going into like you talked about like, you know, kind of shying away from like performing music in college. Did you have like a rise of the phoenix moment where you're like, okay, like it's time? Was that moment like thrust upon you, or did you make that decision actively?
So like I said, I went through this really hard time in college, and let me just ask before we keep talking, what's like the age range for this podcast? Like, can I swear or like talk about heavy things, or should I keep it kind of PG?
We're doing a little PG. Like, I mean, we can get into it, but like, you know,
okay,
we gotta keep the F
I'm just asking.
to a minimum. Yeah,
you can cut that question out if you want.
No, it's totally fine.
No, yeah,
I had Josh McClain on here, if you know. Like,
oh yeah, I love Josh.
Yeah,
okay,
so he tried so hard to not cuss. It was so funny.
That's very sweet. Well, yeah, he's got a little baby now, so he's gonna have to work that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically in college, I was experimenting with partying and drugs, and I also in college got diagnosed with ADHD and depression, which, you know, it's not like those things appeared in college. I had struggled with them my whole life, sort of actually in a way relieving and refreshing to realize like, oh, some things are actually harder for me. I'm not lazy or disrespectful. I have ADHD, and it's harder for me to focus on certain things and whatever. But so all that was going on, and I also was in an abusive relationship in college that really messed with my self-esteem. So I was kind of dealing with all of that, and I think I started to feel like this is the person I've always been, you know, like I've always been insecure, and this is just who I am. And I kind of lost, like, you know, people talk about an inner child. I kind of lost my inner child a little bit, and was just really depressed and having a really hard time. And then at some point in college, I was visiting home, and I found this journal from 6th grade. And I have like a screenshot of this. In the journal, there's this journal entry. It's written in like Crayola marker, and it's from 6th grade. And I'm talking about, this is when I was really into musical theater. So I think in my head, I was thinking musical theater. But in the journal entry, I'm like, when I grow up, I would really like to perform in front of people. Like, that's what I love to do. I think that's my special gift. I can make people smile with singing and with the words that I write. And then at the end, I say, also, I'm a knockout, which is really cute because I was like 11 years old, you know? So and when wonderful. I read that, it was like, it sort of like snapped me out of it a little bit. And I realized, you know, like this downward spiral I've kind of been in college, this really isn't who I am. Like I used to be, I was a really happy kid. I was really outgoing. I was a total ham. I really liked to be in front of people. Like when I was in elementary school and middle school, I had zero stage fright or like zero shame. Like I liked to be in front of people. Yeah. And I think that was a bit of a turning point for me, just sort of remembering like, it's not that I've always been insecure. It's that I've had this like low point for 4 years, you know? So it's less of like doing something I've totally never done before and finding some self-esteem, and more like trying to find the self-esteem I used to have as a younger person. So that helped me. Yeah. And then after I graduated from college, I the whole time I was in college, I never played a show or anything like that. And I had a part-time job at Urban Outfitters in college. And after I graduated that summer, I was working just full-time at Urban Outfitters. I hadn't really figured out what I was doing yet. And they were doing this special pop-up event. It was called like the Girl Power Pop-Up. And they had advertised that there was going to be live music. And it had to be a woman because it was like the Girl Power Pop-Up. And the act that they booked had to cancel last minute. And I knew my manager well enough that he knew that I played music.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that point I had maybe like posted a video or two of me singing on social media, but I was still pretty shy about it.
Mm-hmm.
So basically he asked me to play some original music at the pop-up, and I was really nervous about it, but I did it. And I think I needed that. I needed someone to tell me like, you should do this. And then at that first show I played, which was just totally solo, me and a little like $200 Yamaha keyboard I got on Amazon. I played that show at Urban Outfitters. So this would have been in 2016.
Oh, okay.
And then at that show, I was approached by two people in the audience who said they really enjoyed my set and would I play at an event they were putting together next month. So I got my second gig at my first gig, and I really feel like that was sort of a gift from the universe. It sort of gave me a little more confidence, and I was like, okay, so people actually like this, and maybe I'm actually good. And after those first two gigs sort of fell into my lap, I really did have to kind of grind at it and work harder at it to get going with it. But the first two gigs kind of fell into my lap, and I'm really grateful for that, because I needed it. I needed the little self-esteem boost.
Yeah, that's so funny. I have this old adage with like my friends from high school, because we, everybody like we lived like in a small town like in Atoka. Every high school musician knew each other, so we were all in each other's bands. But like we had an adage that's like, you're not a band until you play a show, because like we would form a band, we'd rehearse 3 times and never see each other again. So
right.
That's
so cute.
So like having that show kind of like fall on your lap is like, okay, like this is the thing now. That's really cool.
And I don't know. I never really in any sort of serious way put together a band in high school. I remember my senior year of high school, I emceed Battle of the Bands.
Oh, wow.
That's actually how I met my high school boyfriend.
Really?
Who's still my friend. He's very sweet, but he was actually in a band.
Oh, okay.
And I was the MC, and I thought that was so cool that he was in a band. And for some reason, I felt like I couldn't do that. Or it's weird to reflect on it now that I release music and people really enjoy it, because I've written music for a really long time, but I just didn't start sharing it until 2016. And I think part of that was insecurity, and part of that was my songs have always been really personal. I don't really know how to not write a song that's really personal. So I think, especially when I was younger, just the idea of sharing a song and having people not like it or make fun of it or something was too horrific for me. Like I can't even deal with that possibility. So I just can't share this. But
I think it's wonder how vulnerable you get in your songwriting though. Because like as a songwriter, there's songs I've written that it's like never seeing the light of day. And like there's a certain fearlessness about your songwriting. Like watching it at that concert the other night, I was like, oh man, this is like
thank
you. That was wonderful.
Keegan is referencing last weekend, which was November 13th. I don't know when we're releasing this, so it might end up being many weekends ago by the time you hear this. But November 13th, I released a solo piano album and played a little solo show at Molly Fontaine's. But yeah, I hear you on that. I really think actually being a creative writing major in college helped me a lot with that vulnerability, because in any sort of creative major like that, I've talked to friends who are art majors who had similar experiences. Your homework basically is creating art, and then you have to share it with your professor and share it with the class, and it sort of rips that Band-Aid off of like feeling uncomfortable about sharing really personal things. And it also rips the Band-Aid off of feeling uncomfortable receiving critique about really personal things. Yeah. Because I would write these short stories, and then part of class is everyone would read them and critique them, but not in a mean way, just in trying to be helpful. And so I think that whole experience helped me a lot with just getting comfortable with sharing personal art with other people. But that's to this day, there are a couple songs I've written that I'm not going to share. Yeah. I mean, maybe someday, but maybe not. Or sometimes I'll write a song and it's really personal, but it's like about something that happened 7 years ago. And it took me that long to feel comfortable sharing it with the class, if you will.
I do think it's really cool. You talk about like getting used to being vulnerable, because that's kind of like a recurring theme in like culture today of like, like Brene Brown, like the power of vulnerability and stuff like that. Like people are craving like connection with one another. And I think that's one thing that makes your music so effective is
Thank you.
it's something people are looking for, because it's like you can scroll through social media all day and it's really hard to find something very genuine. So
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I really try to be genuine, and I am not interested in releasing any music that doesn't feel true to me. Like I'm just for me and my personal timeline, I'm glad that things happened the way they did, and that I waited until I was 22 or 23 to start releasing music. And again, that wasn't really an intentional choice. That's just the timeline of my life.
Yeah.
I didn't have it together enough to even think about doing that before then. But I'm also glad I did that, because I've always like released music that is genuine and is really how I feel, and it's less about like what other people are doing or what's trendy or whatever, and more about like what I really like, and that's not always easy, but it's important to me. Like this album I just released is probably the best example of that, because I really love it, but it took me like a year. I recorded these songs a year ago and basically sat on them for a year, because I had to get comfortable with the idea of, first of all, of them not belonging to me and me alone anymore. And also, you know, it's still a work in progress getting comfortable with this, because I really love them. And I love that it's solo and it's just piano and vocal, but I had some anxiety about like, would other people like it?
Yeah.
Because my other releases are all full band, and I have a great band. And if you'll recall my musical background, my comfort zone is very much like playing in an ensemble.
Right.
So, you know, it's still a work in progress getting comfortable being vulnerable. And there are still some things some topics that I don't explore in my music and don't explore publicly. And maybe one day I will, and maybe one day I won't. But it can be really cathartic to explore things through music and connect to people who relate. And
it's great that you're still like challenging yourself in different ways to do that. You know, you're like, you realize you were aware that like playing with an ensemble was your comfort zone, so it was like, okay, time to release like a solo. So that's fantastic.
Thank you. It was partly that. It was partly that I play shows with my band, but I also play solo shows. So sometimes after a solo show, people would be like, "Oh, I love your music. Where can I hear it?" And I'd direct them to my Bandcamp or Spotify or whatever. And then I'd sort of realize, like, you know, nothing on my Spotify really sounds like what I just played, because it's all this like full band with horns and strings. So part of it was I wanted some sort of recorded release to reflect my solo sets. And then part of it was straight up practicality. I mean, I recorded it at the end of 2020, and it was before anyone was vaccinated, and it was the year of 2020. I just lost a ton of work and a ton of money. So it was way more cost effective to do a solo album. It was way faster to record, way cheaper to mix and master. And it just felt safer. I recorded it with my friend Calvin Lauber at Young Avenue Sound.
Calvin, he's awesome.
Calvin is awesome. He's a really great guy. And so it just felt, there were creative reasons for it, and I wanted to push myself to do that, but it was straight up just the most practical way to record a record in 2020. Also, it kind of all dovetailed together to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
I do kind of want to pivot. We've talked about your band. Your band's awesome. Let's see, where is it?
Thank you. They are awesome. I love them so much. Shout out to my band.
Yeah. What does your rehearsal process look like with an ensemble that big?
So, it's honestly, that's something I'm still figuring out in certain ways. For example, there are a couple songs that I wish I had waited to record until, my band knew them really well, and we had played them live a bunch of times, because I feel like we play them even better now than we did on the recording. So that's something I've learned and I have yet to apply that to a record. But the next time I do a record, I want us to all know the songs really, really well before we go in the studio. But for the last two records I did with my band, Simple Sugar and Silver Daughter, which are from 2018 and 2019 respectively, basically I wrote all the songs. I had it all figured out, like what my part would be, what the piano part is, and what the vocal part is. And I also come in with a pretty strong idea of the vibe of the song, like how I want it to sound. But I mean, my band will tell you I'm not shy about giving my opinion on things, but I don't like sit down and write out every single line that like the trumpet plays. It's more like I know where I want the trumpet to play and I know what I want the vibe to be, and then I let them write their own lines.
Okay.
Because the way I see it is I don't play the trumpet.
Yeah.
And like the trumpet player in my band, Jawan Crawford, he's an incredible trumpet player, and he is going to know how to write a trumpet line that is fun for him to play and that makes sense musically better than I will. And I'll also say we have this bond with my band where everyone in my band has a similar background, that we were all in concert band or orchestra or choir or whatever. So we all kind of speak the same musical language. But I feel pretty strongly about that, about letting the musicians have input on what they're playing on their instrument.
For sure.
And it's collaborative. Like if they play something that's not really what I was looking for, I will tell them that. But it'll be more along the lines of like, why don't you try playing some longer, slower notes there? Or how about you come in a couple measures earlier? I think that would sound good. Stuff like that.
Okay.
But I mean, I just feel really, really lucky to have my band because they really know what they're doing. They make me sound good. You know, that's part of why they're in my comfort zone, because they make me sound good. But I write all of the music, and when I say music, like I just described, I don't necessarily write out the horn lines and violin lines, but I come in with my piano part written and the structure of the song super figured out, and kind of like an idea of the vibe of the song, and I write all my own lyrics. I'm pretty stubborn about writing all my own lyrics too. I've had people ask if they can like ghostwrite a song for me, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but no, you can't. I'm that's one of my favorite parts of the whole writing process is the lyrics. So.
I think it would be pretty, like as a fan of yours, it would be pretty easy to tell if you were singing someone else's tune. Like, yeah, she didn't write that. So. Yeah.
Well, I would never do that. I mean, I love to write just as its own separate practice. Right. So that's sort of the process. I will bring this song. I make sure I really kind of know what's going on with the song before I bring it to my band. I don't like to bring them songs that I'm still figuring out.
Yeah.
So I'll totally figure out how I want the song, and then I'll either bring it to the full entire band, or sometimes I'll record it and send them the recording so they can kind of work on it. My drummer, Michael Todd, is very talented, very, very good drummer. And I've gotten better at this over the years, but sometimes he'll point out little things like, so you have a measure in here that has 5 beats instead of 4. Is that on purpose? Sometimes it is. And sometimes I'm like, nope, let's iron that out. So, so usually Michael will kind of get his thing going, and then Gunter, the bassist, will get his thing going. And then we have, Victor Sawyer plays the trombone, Jawan Crawford plays the trumpet, and Anna Elizabeth Craig plays the violin. And that's sort of usually how we build it up. I start with my piece, then we add in the rhythm section, and then the orchestral section is like the last part that we add in, generally speaking. So for those past 2 records, we sort of did all that, like maybe did a couple rehearsals with that, and then did a lot of that work like in the studio, like as we were recording. Yeah. But I had my strong base of my piano and vocal take, and then we would kind of build stuff on top of it. But the next time I do a record with my band, I want us to have learned the songs and performed them live before we go and record them. So, you know, it's still a learning process for me. I just think first of all, I think that's kind of a more effective use of studio time, but also sometimes you figure stuff out in live performance that 100%. Makes the song even better.
Good one. Your slogan, Chamber Punk Symphonic Funk. It brings forth an image. This is what I wrote. It brings forth an image of the worlds of contemporary and classical music colliding.
Yes, you get it, Keegan. That's exactly what it's supposed to do.
I think I posted an Instagram story one day because I was wearing your shirt. I was like, I can teach like an instrument family's lesson from your shirt.
I love that. I remember that. That made me happy.
Do you feel like there is like a gap between contemporary and classical music?
What do you mean by that? Because of course there is. You know, of course they're different.
So like, how do you feel like you're kind of putting those worlds together?
So yeah, that's definitely what my
Oh, sorry, by gap I meant like a cultural gap.
It's so I've been teaching piano lessons for I think almost 3 years now, but I've been really, this year I've been teaching more than I ever have. Like the first year and a half I did it, I had 2 students, and now I have, I think, 8 students. So it's just really different. But it's so fun. Some of these kids don't have music in school. And so I'll say do you know who Beethoven is? They'll say no. But then the song in their lesson book will be Ode to Joy, and they'll know the song, do, 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 do. They'll be like, oh, that was in a commercial, or, oh, that's a ringtone. Yeah. So there are so many, and Ode to Joy is not the only one. There are so many classical songs that have made their way into our cultural consciousness. Even, a little 7-year-old kid who has no idea who Beethoven is. They don't even know the history of this tune, but they know the tune. So I think classical music affects us more than we realize, even people who aren't total nerds about it like me. Right. There's certain tunes like the theme from Swan Lake or In the Hall of the Mountain King. That song is in the Trolls movie, In the Hall of the Mountain King. Oh, wow. I did not know that. I really like the Trolls movie. It's pretty dorky, but that movie was way better than I expected it to be, and I really liked it. And part of it was because it's full of music. I will look over a weird plot line if the music in a movie is really good. And so in this Trolls movie, they're playing the song In the Hall of the Mountain King. So there's little kids out there that know this song without even knowing the context. But then if you know the context, In the Hall of the Mountain King is about trolls, and then that movie's about trolls, whatever. So I truly believe that we all know more about classical music than we realize we do. We're exposed to it more than we realize we are. And most classical music is public domain. So we hear it all the time in commercials and ringtones and online. And so I would say that most people listening to this, even if they think they don't know a lot about classical music, they've probably heard a lot more of it than they realize they have, and they probably recognize a lot more of it than they realize they do. So that's part one. And then having said all that, I can't say other contemporary artists. I don't know if they're as consciously influenced by classical music as I am, because I really do love it. I'll put on people playing piano concertos. I'll put that on in the background while I clean my house or whatever, because I just enjoy listening to it. And my background, particularly in piano, is classical. Yeah. I know it influences my piano playing. And I think for the better. I think I tell my piano students this all the time. Even if ultimately the music you want to play is not classical music, the classical music will make you better at playing whatever you want to play. 100%. Because it's precise and it is emotional. I think it is. Maybe someone could argue me on that, but it has ranges of emotion and really strong dynamic ranges, which if any listeners don't know, in music, dynamics is volume. Classical music will get really soft and really loud, but so that chamber punk and symphonic funk, I started thinking about that because there's a genre of music called chamber pop that I really like, and I didn't even realize I really liked it until Spotify started telling you what genres you listen to. Oh, yeah. And it said my number one genre, this was a few years ago, it said my number one genre was chamber pop. So I Googled that, and it's basically pop music that utilizes chamber orchestral instruments, which is strings and woodwinds and horns, and that has classical music influences. So a great example of chamber pop is Regina Spektor. Oh, okay. She is a really good example of it. She uses little plucky strings, and she uses she prefers to use real instruments over electronic instruments, but it's still pop music. It's not actually chamber orchestra music. So that was the first time I ever heard of chamber pop, and I was like, oh, straight up, this is the genre I listen to all the time. I love Fiona Apple. I love Regina Spektor. These people really influence my music. Yeah. And then the chamber punk, rather than chamber pop, came from the fact that, especially with my band, I do have a lot of songs that have this sort of this anger or like this fire behind them that just felt a little bit spicier than pop.
Yes,
some of them are probably technically chamber pop, but that's where the chamber punk came from.
That's very cool.
And then symphonic funk is pretty much the same idea, but it rhymes first of all. And then I love funk music. I listen to a lot of music from the 70s. I love like ripping bass lines. Someday I'll learn how to play the bass because I think it's so fun. And anyway, you nailed it. It's definitely supposed to be like this marriage of classical music and contemporary music. And it really helps that my band all has this classical background as well. But I think classical music influences a lot of my work. And I can give you like a direct example if you want.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there is this pretty famous song. Oh my gosh, you'll have to fact check me on this. I believe that it's by Haydn, but we'll have to fact check that. But it's the Surprise Symphony.
I think it is.
Well, you Google that for me really quick, and if I'm wrong, then I'll I'll rescind that. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure it's Haydn. Okay, so. Yeah. Yet another example of classical music influencing.
Oh, you were right.
Hell yeah. Okay. So Haydn's Surprise Symphony. So the story behind that colloquially goes that people were falling asleep at Haydn's concerts and he was offended. So he wrote this song that to sort of intentionally wake people up. It's yet another one that kids don't think they know, but they do. It goes, do, 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 do. Do 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 do, and then there's a really loud wow, like a really so whatever. So that's the Surprise Symphony, and it starts out like really slow and kind of almost like a lullaby, and then there's this huge loud moment. So I have a song called Treatment, and I literally straight from Papa Haydn was like, people really leave during my slow songs. They are going to get drinks and going to the bathroom and going outside to smoke a cigarette. And just like Haydn, I'm like a little offended by that. I'm my slow songs are good too. So this song Treatment, it starts out intentionally very like chill and slow. And it's like a lullaby and sort of like lulls you into like, okay, I know what this song is going to be about. It's very chill. And then there's a moment in the song that's like super loud. The song starts out just me and the violin, and then out of nowhere on the bridge the whole band comes in and I start singing really loud, and it sort of like jolts people awake. So that really cool. Was straight up influenced by the Surprise Symphony by Franz Joseph Haydn.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I also, it's sort of to bring in the contemporary, the song Treatment. It's one of the few songs I always talk before when I perform it, because I wrote it when I was going through some medical issues and I was feeling really frustrated I felt like many songs are about relationships and love, and if anyone listening has gone through any like medical issues or mental health issues or addiction issues or whatever, when you're going through that, like you don't really care about your romantic relationships that much. Like you kind of have to focus on this thing that you're dealing with. So the song Treatment is about going through like medical treatment, and I always dedicate it. I've had a lot of friends go through treatment for addiction and mental health, and I'm honestly shocked that I personally have never gone through like inpatient mental health treatment. I've been outpatient in therapy for years, but anyway, the song Treatment is about mental health and physical health and being in treatment. And so to me, it ties into that Surprise Symphony thing too, about like how it feels to go through something like that. Like you'll kind of get into a routine with it, and then one day you'll be like, no, actually, like this sucks. I'm mad. I hate it here. So anyway, I'm very influenced by classical music, and I love it.
Yeah, I love adding to that, going to the Surprise Symphony, like in dealing with mental health, there is like a level of immediacy, like, and like the volume of that tune adds to that. One thing you've been really good at, just to segue a little bit, and very vocal about on social media is like not playing shows, quote unquote, like for free and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Can we kind of dive into like what's your booking process, your negotiation process, and things like that when you start booking shows? Because I think there are a lot of like beginning musician, like any show's a show, and then you get into the weeds of you're playing a bunch of free shows, you know.
Yes. So here's the thing. When I say like never play a show for free, I have gotten really big pushback on that from people before who are like, no, like when you're first starting out, you have to pay your dues, you have to play shows for free, whatever. And I do think there is a certain level of paying your dues, you know, like when musicians hit a certain point, they might charge thousands of dollars for their show. And if it's your first ever show, that's a little absurd to think that you could do that. But I just so firmly believe that you should be getting paid something. I don't care if it's a cut of the door. I don't care if the bartender agreed to throw you $100 or whatever. But the thing is, like, music is fun and it's art, but it's also labor and time. And you're devaluing your own time and labor if you do that for free. And you're also devaluing your colleagues' time and labor if you send out a message that, yeah, I'll do this for free. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and I especially feel passionately about this because music's my full-time job. And the way that it's my full-time job is that I don't play shows for free.
100%.
I will play shows, quote unquote, for free if it's for like a charitable cause I believe in. Mm-hmm. But even still, I do not see that as playing it for free. I see it as donating my time, you know, so music is time and music is labor. And the other thing that I've realized through years of playing shows in nightlife is, you know, you playing a show, even if you're just starting out, you are doing something of value to that venue or that bar, you know. People are coming and they're maybe paying a cover or buying drinks, or some of your friends are coming out to see you. So like that bar or venue is making money off of you, you know, and you should see some of that money. 100%. So it's totally absurd for any bar or venue to pretend like they can't afford to pay you something. I don't care if it's your first show ever and they're paying you $20. They should pay you something.
Right.
Because it is a ton of time and energy and effort that goes into rehearsing for a show and bringing all your gear there and setting it all up. And most people I know who play shows also advertise the show and invite their friends, and you should see something from that. Yeah. You know, there is this level of paying your dues, quote unquote, where you probably won't make as much money in the beginning, but you should never make $0. And anyone who says you should make $0 straight up doesn't value music as a job, because it's really absurd if you think about it. Like I know I used to work retail. My first day of working retail, I wasn't necessarily great at it. I was still learning what to do, and I still got paid.
Yeah.
They didn't make me work for free until I was really great at retail, you know, or like, even if it's your first day on the job as a plumber, you still get paid. They're not like, you know what, you're going to be a free plumber until you're like really good and everyone really wants you to plumb for them.
Yeah.
You know, that's totally absurd. So like, probably you won't make as much money, but you are doing labor for someone else. You should make some money, and don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise, because not only are you devaluing yourself, you're devaluing other musicians. You're like sending a message to that venue or that event organizer or whatever that music isn't worth anything, you know, and that you can just get away with getting a free band. And that's totally absurd to me.
Right. No, I think it's great, especially you talk about like your first day on the job. You know, like even if I get fired after one day of work, I still get paid for that one day of work.
Exactly.
So I think that's a great analogy. What does your process look like for booking shows?
So I really try to do everything by email if I can. I said earlier in this podcast that I have ADHD, which I really do. And so, and I'm an independent artist. I do not have a manager. I'm not signed to a label. I ask for help when I need it. You know, I'm not going to pretend I do everything on my own, but I'm like seeking out that help if I have it. And I do all my own booking and all my own advertising, like for sure. So for me, I try to keep it all into email because then I can find everything. There's too many inboxes, you know. I got texts, I got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then I actually have 2 inboxes on Facebook because there's my band page and my personal page. Right. And when things start getting into the DM inboxes, it becomes overwhelming. To me, it becomes overwhelming to me, and things get lost in the sauce. And so I try to keep everything in email. The other reason I have like written in every social media bio and on my website, like, please email to book. The other reason I do that is because I think it helps kind of weed out people who might not be as respectful. Like if you can't read the instruction of please email to book, I maybe don't want to book with you, you know, because you couldn't follow like this one very simple boundary. You know, it really does sort of, and it weeds out people that aren't super serious. Like if someone sends me a DM about a show, which happens all the time, I'll say, great, thank you so much. Please send me an email about this. And I would say 75% of the time they never send the email. Wow. So I'm like, okay, so you didn't really care about this, you know? And anyway, so I try my best to keep it all in my email. And then, so that's part 1. Part 2 is you have to pay me. And so that weeds out some other gigs. Like if you don't want to pay me, I'm probably not going to do it. Right. Like I said, unless it's for something charitable that I care about and believe in. So there's that and there's that. I also, when I first started, I took like every gig ever. I was like, oh yeah, if you want me to play, I will play. I'm just happy to be here. Hallelujah. You know, and over the years, I've gotten a little choosier with it. Probably just for my own sanity. Like sometimes, like earlier in October, there was a week where I played like 3 gigs in 1 week, which is unusual for me. Normally I would give myself more time to recuperate, but I really wanted to play all 3 of the gigs. So I did it. But I'm a little choosier. First of all, if I just straight up don't. Oh no! I know it stopped again.
Oh well, we'll just use the B-roll can.
Okay, cool.
Hi, B-roll can.
But yeah, first of all, if I just straight up don't want to do the show for whatever reason, maybe I am really busy, or maybe I, for whatever little personal idiosyncratic reason, don't love playing that venue or whatever. If I don't want to play the show, I won't play it. Or if it's like I already have a show booked December 10th and you're asking me to play December 11th, that's too close together. Probably won't do that. So I decide, is this a show I want to do? Are they down to pay me? So I have, in booking shows, you can do a door deal, which is when you get a percentage of the door, or you can have a guarantee, which is like, you have to pay me this much for me to play. And I have a guarantee because everyone in my band is like a working professional. Most of them are professional musicians. I can't ask them to play a show that they're not going to get paid for. Like I'm not going to do that to them. So, so then I, you know, and my guarantee is pretty modest. It could probably be more than it is. I'll tell the audience what it is. It actually, up until like right now, it's been $600 for a 6-piece band. So we each make $100. Very
reasonable.
It's like incredibly reasonable. And if anyone makes me feel like it's not reasonable, then I don't want to work with them, you know? And I'm bumping it up to $750 because I think we're worth it.
Yeah,
you know,
no, I think that,
but yeah, so there's that, or I have a different rate if you're booking me solo, which it was, I'm actually still, I think I'm going to change my solo rate too, but for years now, it's been $100 an hour, but I think I'm going to change it to something like flat rate of $200 and then additional for every additional hour, just because it really is so much effort for me to like, you know, I'm my own roadie too, to like bring all my gear out there. Pianos are very heavy, set it all up, et cetera, et cetera. So this is actually a really good example of how it goes. I've had these rates for a couple years, and now I feel like the demand for my shows has increased, and therefore I feel like I can push my rate up a little bit, right? When I go on tour, it's a little different because people don't know me as well outside of Memphis. So sometimes I'll do a door deal on tour just because I want to play the show. But yeah, so that's basically it. I email the book. If they can't email me, then it's not going to happen. And then I decide, like, does this date work with my schedule and my band schedule? I send them my rate. And if that all comes together, which I'm making it sound more complicated than it is, it usually does all come together. If that all comes together, then we're good to go. And awesome. I start like getting together some rehearsals with my band. I start trying to figure out a poster, which Keegan made me a really cool poster for a show last month, which was awesome.
You've given me so much shout out for that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I'm so flattered that you would be like,
I really believe in that too. Shout out your people who help you do things. That's how I got you to do
this interview.
Yeah.
I was laughing earlier too.
I would have done it anyway. But,
I was laughing earlier because you were talking about like booking only via email, and I set this entire thing up over Instagram, so I feel really guilty now.
Oh, whatever.
Next time I will email you.
That's on me. I didn't say anything. But this is a little bit. This isn't a show. Yeah. It's. I do try and keep things via email, but also I kind of know you. It's like if a total stranger that I've never spoken to before DMs me, I'll tell them to email me. So. It is a little different if I have a personal friendship with someone. I'll sometimes do the DM, but don't tell people that, man. Come on.
Yeah, I'm exclusive. I'm talking to the wrong camera. I'm exclusive.
Yeah, but the booking can be a little stressful, and it has been so much better since I took this pressure off of myself to feel like, I have to do every single gig that comes my way. It's like, can they pay me what? Like my rate is basically like what I want to be paid that makes the like emotional and physical labor of playing the show worth it, you know? And if you can't pay me that, I probably won't do it because it's just just not worth it. It's like most of us probably, it's like, to return to my plumber analogy or whatever your job may be, like even if you love your job, you probably wouldn't go to work if they were like, hey, but we're not going to pay you today. Just, I hope that's cool. I hope you can just come to work just for the love of work. And it's like, no, I love my job. I love music, but it is my full-time job. So if I can't be paid, then I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. That's fine. Left public education. Oh,
yes.
Might have to edit that out.
Yeah. And there also, I've learned over the years, there are certain venues in town that are more willing to pay me than other venues. Like I'm just going to shout out Black Lodge really quick. They have always been very adamant about wanting to pay their artists and pay them what they're worth. And they've always just without blinking paid my guarantee.
That's wonderful.
And don't say this to cast any aspersions on other venues, but I mean, that is just a standout feature of Black Lodge, that they've never tried to talk me down or switch me to a door deal or anything. They're just like, sure, that we will pay you that.
That's wonderful.
So I love playing there for that reason.
Cool.
I feel very valued and respected.
Yeah. That's also a killer venue too.
Oh yeah,
I played there one time.
So fun.
It's great.
Yeah, they have a great stage.
Cool. I'm gonna try to. Richard's waiting Richard. I'm keeping Richard here, so I'm gonna try to wrap this up at some point. Yeah. But I do want to. I have this quote that I'm really want to kind of get in the weeds on that I found on your website, if you wouldn't mind expanding upon. So it says, I'm deeply interested in using music as a way to bring communities together. If there's a cause that helps disadvantaged communities, queer folks, POC, women, the homeless, music, especially live shows, can be a way to bring light and love to that cause and community in an exuberant and accessible way. What are some ways that you've seen this quote come to life in your music or in other people's music?
Oh, yeah. So I really do believe in that. I hesitate to call myself like an activist because it feels really loaded, but I mean, there are a lot of causes I'm very passionate about. I'm very passionate about like social equity and equality. I myself am bisexual. I'm a member of the LGBT community. My eldest sibling is transgender. Like two members of my band are Black. Like I have friends and people I love who are affected by social inequity all the time. And I would have to be like totally blind to not see that or care about it, So I really care about stuff like that. And some of these issues are complicated, but I do my best with them. I'm far from perfect, but I do my best. And the way I see it, like, what I have to offer is my music and my platform. So like, let me offer that the best way I know how. And really what I mean by that quote, like using music or entertainment as a way for people to come together on a cause is like, I really do enjoy playing benefit shows, and I enjoy putting them together. And I've put together several over the years because I just feel like, the world can be a pretty dark and depressing place. And, it can feel really hard to do the right thing, or it can feel like you know, it can feel like there's a lot of pressure to do the right thing, and maybe we don't always know what it is. And, you know, like we're both white. Right. There was a lot of conversation that came up in a really big way on like a global scale about the racism in our country last year. And it's like, we're white people, we need to care about that, but also like, how do we care about that in the best way? Like, when do we use our platform and when do we pass the mic?
Right.
Like, I don't even have all the answers to that. I'm still figuring it out. And then you're a man, like
right.
when it comes to issues of like gender inequality or rape culture, like I'm sure you have some of the same thoughts of like, when do I speak up? When do I listen and pass the mic? Those are not easy questions. There isn't an easy answer to any of those questions. Like, the only clear answer I have is like, you have to care about it, or you should. I mean, that's like a part of living in a society. Like, we're all connected to each other, and whether you realize it or not, like when one community is downtrodden, it affects everyone, or it could affect someone you don't even know. Like, there could be a queer person in your life who you don't even realize is gay, or like you have a baby daughter, she could grow up and be transgender. So you should care about that right now. Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, you just never know. So, so that stuff I really care about. And I do think that for a lot of people, these really big, complicated questions become really overwhelming. And I also think for a lot of people, they're so afraid of doing the wrong thing or being criticized for doing the wrong thing that they don't do anything. Yeah. That's, and I understand that, but that's not, so basically what I'm trying to say is I think having like a benefit show where we're all coming together to like really think about a cause and give money to people out there who are helping this cause and to like shine a light on people who are doing good things. That's a way to like combine entertainment and activism. So it's like you're out at a show having a nice time, but you can also feel good. Like, this money is going to make my community better. Yeah, you know,
that's wonderful.
I just think that's the best thing ever. So I've always tried to incorporate that. So one of the first shows I ever did in 2017, I saw this video on Facebook about these struggles that homeless people face when they're on their period. And I had never thought about that ever. And I was like, wow, that must be terrible. Like, that must be horrible. It must be really hard to be hygienic. So I had this thought of like, what if I had a show where the cover for the show was like a period product, and then we donated them all to some sort of, you know, homeless shelter or some sort of place that would get them to the right people. So I did that in 2017. I called the show Bleeding Love. And I then, one of my friends, Erica Grant, kind of took that concept, and this hair salon is closed now, but there used to be a hair salon in Midtown called Laveau. And they, I think 2 years in a row, did an event called La Flow that was this same concept that I came up with of having the cover for the show be period products and then donating them to the homeless community. So that was sort of my first taste of organizing a show. And then something I'm kind of proud of, honestly, this was now before the pandemic. I believe it was in 2019. There's a local organization called Mariposas Collective, and they help migrant families who travel through Memphis. So most of them are from Mexico or Latin America, and they come through Memphis on the Greyhound buses, and often they've been on the bus since the Texas border, and they don't necessarily, they aren't given toiletries or food, or you know, some of them don't speak English, they don't really, so they're just sort of thrown into the country, you know. And so Mariposas Collective gathers bagged lunches and toiletries and shoes and food, and they do a lot of like children's clothing and shoes and storybooks and stuff, and they send volunteers to the Greyhound bus station and kind of help give these free supplies to migrant families coming through Memphis. And also they'll have translators there to kind of help people figure out what is going on. Many of these families don't stay in Memphis, they're just passing through. But so Mariposas Collective is great, and I started volunteering with them, and I started just, you know, volunteering. I was literally like making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and making the bag lunches. And then Hunter Dempster, who is like an amazing local activist, saw that I was volunteering with them and asked if I would help him put together a benefit concert that they'd sort of been planning. And that was a really wonderful experience for me because I kind of realized like, I put together so many shows that putting together this benefit concert, it's just very in my wheelhouse. You know, it's very my skill set. I know what venue will let me do this. I know what bands will be down to play with me. I know who to hit up about a poster. So I helped put that together, and it was a really big success. And we raised some good money for the cause. And that's the last benefit show that I put together myself, but I did perform in one earlier this year for this local charity called A Better Way. It's spelled Betor, and it's named after an artist whose last name was Better, who passed away of a heroin overdose. So it's like a harm reduction charity. They give out Narcan, and they help addicts kind of find their way and hopefully find their way through recovery. So
very cool.
My friend David McNinch set that up. He plays in Mama Honey. He's the drummer in Mama Honey.
Okay. Awesome.
And so I didn't organize that. I just played in it. But yeah, I love doing stuff like that, and I think it's important, and it I don't know, like I love being a musician and being an artist, but there is some of it that is like, you know, it's so like there's so much exploration of the self, and I don't think that is inherently narcissistic, but I do think that like what gives my job balance, so that it's not just me being really introspective about myself and then writing poems about it and then sharing those poems, like doing these benefit shows and sort of, you know, like giving of my skill set back to the community I'm in, and also like teaching the piano lessons. Those are the things that make me feel really good about what I do. Like those are the things that feel like the most important part of my job that sort of fills up my soul, is that stuff.
Okay,
you know?
very cool.
The end. I think that's the end of my answer.
I think that's great. I really like how you talk about like shows and activism, like, because I think about this all the time, like being a straight white dude, like how do I support a cause while maintaining a level of like being respectful? You know, and like, you know, you talk about shows just being an opportunity to do just that, like you can support a cause while maintaining a level of respectability for a community that you're not a part of or something like that. So
exactly.
I think that's great.
You know, and I would just say also just to that point, because you know, I have a ton of privilege. I am bisexual, but I'm dating a man, so it's like you wouldn't even really know that unless I told you. And I am a white woman, and I'm able-bodied. I am cisgender. I have checked basically every privilege box except for man, you know? So I really get how you feel. And I think a really big part of it is like, just know that like you won't always get it right, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. You know what I mean? Like speaking out about things like this means that sometimes you might get it wrong, and someone might correct you and be like, hey, actually, like you don't quite have this right, or hey, actually, like shut up. You know, like this isn't your thing to talk about. But you should still try. You know, you really should, because you will never learn the right way to do it if you don't try and make yourself vulnerable to that critique. You know, that's how you learn to do better. And I have gotten some tough critiques in life. I comfort myself by knowing that my heart has always been in the right place. You know, I'm never trying to do the wrong thing, but of course when you put yourself out there, you're not going to get it right all the time. Everyone is human, and it's not always perfect, but I think it's important, you know, to try and to not be so afraid of doing the wrong thing that you don't do anything. Yeah,
that's a fantastic point. I really appreciate that, because I get in my head about that a lot, actually. All right, I got two more, and then we're going to wrap up. This is kind of like my signature question. Do you have, I just hit the mic stand. Do you have a favorite failure?
Wow, what a cool question.
Thank you.
I wasn't prepared for this. Let me think. Oh my gosh. I mean, I am a deeply flawed person. I have failed so many times at so many things, you know, honestly. Let me think here. I can think of several relationships that I was so sad about ending. And now in retrospect, I'm like, wow, thank God that relationship ended. But I would say, when I was in college, I was really focused on my path as an English major, and the job I ended up getting after college was at the library, and I was really on this sort of perfect little path where I had a boyfriend I've been dating for like 2 years, and these are the hardest breakups. There's nothing super wrong with him, I've dated people where it was like I really needed to break up with him. There was something really wrong going on, but like with him, it was fine. And then I had this job at the library, which on paper seemed like it should be perfect. It's a job with my degree, and I love books, and I have this great job at the library. And especially in retrospect, I was so young. I was 23, and I felt like I had just done everything right, and I had done everything to make my parents proud of me, and I could very easily go right along and keep this job and marry this guy, and that would be my life, and everyone would be so proud of me, and I would be such a respectable member of society, and there I go, and things would be great. And I couldn't do it. I mean, I could have done it, but like I mentally and emotionally couldn't do it. I was super depressed, and I didn't understand why, because I was like, I'm doing everything right. Like, why is this making me depressed? It shouldn't be. I have checked off all the boxes. I did everything right. I graduated from college. I got a job with my degree. I'm dating this cute guy, and he really likes me. Like, why am I unhappy? And but I really was just like so unhappy, and at the time I was doing music really as like a side hobby. This is in 2017, and that was the thing that made me happy. And so I guess you could count it as a failure, because it's where I deviated from my path, right? Like I made a choice that didn't make sense to everyone in my family, and I made a choice for myself, that maybe didn't make as much sense on paper, or maybe made my parents worry about me a little more, but it's what made me happy. So I literally made all these life changes all at once. I was in a living situation I wasn't super happy, and it was like very cheap, and it made a lot of sense. And my roommate was really sweet. Shout out Megan, you're amazing, and I love you. But it's no shade to the roommate. But I lived with a roommate in Bartlett, and it was very affordable. But I was like, I want to live by myself in Midtown. Like that's what I want. So literally, like within 2 weeks, I made all these changes. I quit my job at the library. I broke up with my boyfriend of 2 years, and I moved to a 1-bedroom apartment in Midtown. And I was like, I'm going to do music full time. And I'm not even going to pretend that was an easy time in my life at all. It was really hard and really scary. And I'm like, couldn't be more glad that I did that. I'm so glad I did that. Yeah. And my number one, I'll just go ahead and throw this in here. My generation, young millennials, are one of our great tragedies is heroin addiction. A lot of us have lost friends to that or watched people struggle with that. Yeah. And it doesn't really discriminate. It affects it. I think it's touched everyone's life. Right. And one of my dearest best friends from high school overdosed on heroin in 2017 and was in a coma for a couple months. And she really miraculously survived that. She honestly medically shouldn't have survived, but she did. And long story short, she's super happy now, and she has a very beautiful daughter and a fiance, and I'm her daughter's godmother, and it's so cute. But if we go back in time to 2017, I did not know that that's how this story would turn out. So I'm in this position where my childhood best friend is like maybe going to die and is in a coma from this drug overdose, and I went to visit her in the hospital, and it was awful and so sad. And I just had this like epiphany moment of like, I'm so unhappy in my life, and I chose all the things that are making me unhappy. Like, I don't like my job. I don't like where I live. I don't like my relationship, but I have autonomy over all those things. Like I chose those things, and my friend is in a coma right now. She can't choose anything. She has no autonomy over anything in this moment. For some reason that sort of snapped me into this. And I was like, there's so much in life that we don't get to choose. We don't get to choose like what we look like, or where we're born, or what age we are. We don't get to there's so much who our family is. We don't get to choose that stuff, but I get to choose where I work and who I date and where I live. Like that's all in my power. So I like had this crazy epiphany, existential crisis, and then I changed all this stuff about my life, and it was so hard. And I have a really good relationship with my parents. I'm really lucky in that. And part of what was really hard about it for me is I didn't want to disappoint them. They were so proud of me working at the library. But I remember talking to them on the phone and telling them I'm going to quit working at the library and I want to do music full time. And they were very concerned about it in a loving way. But my mom said something like, I don't think that very many people really make it as a musician. And I was like, yeah, but some people do. So I have to try, why not me? And I will also say to that point, something that I've had to discover for myself and sort of explain to my family is there's this huge misconception about being a musician that you're either like busking on the street for coins or you're super wealthy and famous. And there really is a ton of middle ground of 100%. Professional musicians who are just like ordinary working class, middle class people, and anyway, so I failed at working my government pension job that I got with my college degree. It did not work for me. And I'm really glad that it didn't work for me because I wouldn't be sitting here doing this podcast.
I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
Oh man. Louise, you're a superhero. I said that the other night. I'd like posted on Instagram. It's like, Louise Page is my hero.
That's so nice.
Yes, this has been absolutely wonderful. And I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of your wealth of knowledge and expertise.
Wow.
You are
we'll have to do another podcast.
Yeah, I'm calling you out right now.
Yeah.
Real quick, or as quick as you want it to be. Where can people find you? What do you have going on?
Awesome.
All the stuff. I want to know everything
things
that is going on in your life and career right now.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for listening. My name is, once more, Louise Page. You can find me on Instagram at Wheezy Page, WeezyPage. And you can find me on Facebook also at Wheezy Page if you do the @ or you can just search Louise Page. I'll come up. I'm on Spotify and Apple Music and all of those good places. I have a Bandcamp, wheezypage.bandcamp.com. I have a website, louisepagemusic.com. And I also just released an album. Keegan and I have referenced it a couple times. It's all just piano and vocals. It's called Play Nice. And you can find that on Bandcamp or wherever you stream music, hopefully soon. As of this interview, which is it's November 16th.
Yes.
As of today, it hasn't popped up on Spotify yet, but hopefully by the time this interview airs, it will be up on Spotify.
Keep hitting refresh.
Yeah. But that's kind of my new project is this solo album, and I'm about to take it real easy during the holidays and spend some time with my family. And then next year, I hope to really hit the ground running and work on a new studio album with my band and hopefully go on tour again.
Heck yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to taking my time with it. Pre-pandemic, I put a lot of pressure on myself to go. And I need to do all this stuff before I turn 30 or I'm a huge failure. And I really don't feel that way anymore. I have a whole life to live and I'm just taking my time, but I'm very proud of this solo album, Play Nice. So if you enjoyed this podcast and if you enjoy piano music, consider checking it out.
Cool. We will put a link in the description for all of you YouTubers that are going to watch this.
Thank you. Oh, I have a YouTube too. I got some music videos.
Yes.
So
you just released a video called Mirage.
I did, directed by Laura Jean Hawking. Yes, I'm very proud of that video. So youtube.com/C/Louise Page.
Fantastic.
It's my YouTube. I got some cute little music videos, if that's your thing.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. This was great fun.
Bye. We'll see y'all later.
Bye.
All right. Thank you all so much for listening. If you are interested in more episodes, you can find us on all streaming platforms, and you can find more information at keeganpaluso.com, and you can find us on all platforms at Modern Working Musician. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next time.